Okay, well, can you guys hear me clearly now? Is it working? Let's say hi to you guys again. No more 2000. Okay, well that's good. Let's try this again. Hello, Standing. Hello, Mage. Hello, Lurkers. And hello, VOD Watchers. Hope you're all having a good Choomsday. I am... Results inconclusive, shall we say. But we're getting by. We persist. I am tired. I am tired. I had a good weekend though. It was a good weekend. How was yours? We did get the bike ride in. It was clear. It was not worn, it turned out. When I started, it felt great. When I started, it was very good. And then, even OBS says, I know. It's Tuesday and it feels like a freaking Thursday. And it turns out we don't even get Veterans Day off, which is like, is that allowed? But also Veterans Day is on a Tuesday this year, which I didn't really know could happen. But there it is. Anyway, yeah, so the first half of the ride was fine, and then I don't know, it's like the second half, the temperature just like plummeted like 5 degrees or something. It was chilly the whole way back, and I was just like, all right, just get home, just get home, just get home. But it was nice though. It was nice. It was nice to get back on the bike. Which reminds me, good job everyone surviving daylight savings. I'm glad that worked. I'm glad everyone is here. Hopefully there weren't any issues or confusion with the schedule. But yeah, the real downside for me is the like it's dark basically by the time I finish work now. So after work outdoor activities like running or biking is pretty much out until spring, which kind of sucks. Basically means we can only do bike rides on Sundays now, and then even running like has to be during a lunch break. So you know, it's like we'll make it work, but it is kind of annoying. It's limiting, you know. Who's harsh? Good job enduring. So yeah, I was glad to get out at least. I did manage to play some Star Citizen. It actually performed pretty well. I was impressed. I did discover though, I think it uses my C drive as a scratch disk. You know, it's like writing temporary files and stuff to it. It turns out my C drive was pretty much full. So it tried to do that and it couldn't find any room, and its solution was just to crash the game, which was very cool. But yeah, once I deleted some downloads and stuff and cleared some space, it ran fine. Honestly, I've been having a pretty good experience with this patch. I'm hearing from other people that it's not so good. Like some people are only having like a roughly 50% success rate with their missions. But for me, it's been running pretty well. It's back in my good graces. We'll see how long that lasts for. So yeah, I've been trying a bit more of that. Yeah, honestly, haven't been playing a ton of games. Mostly just been sort of working on drawings and chilling out. Did some cooking yesterday. So yeah, I don't know, just kind of vibing, just kind of chilling. Might reach out to a friend and see if they want to hang out possibly this weekend, more likely next weekend. See what their availability is. That does remind me. Probably the last. So we had D&D group, right? We were gonna do the last session, but the GM got sick, so we weren't able to do it. And then last Friday was Halloween, so nobody wanted to meet last week. So this Friday is gonna be the redo, and hopefully everything will work out and we get to sort of close out this mini campaign, which will be good. You know, I like D&D. I feel like every time I've tried to play D&D, we run into this situation, right? We get to a point where people's schedules aren't compatible with meeting up at regular intervals, and then it just kind of falls apart. It's just really frustrating. I get it. I don't blame anybody for it, but it's frustrating. You know, the one D&D group I had that was really successful was back in grad school, and it worked because there were five of us, and we were all students at the same school, so we would just meet on Saturdays in the MFA room and just play there. And then afterwards, you know, I think I would typically stick around and get some schoolwork done. A lot of, you know, the rest of the group for the most part went home. But it's like we're all in the same place. We're all on sorry, I had to send a message. We're all basically, you know, on the same schedule more or less, so it was like really easy to coordinate. And then once we graduated and everybody sort of started picking up their own stuff and having their own real life to deal with, you know, the group kind of couldn't keep going with it. Real life sucks, man. I did want to bring up, so there was a video I watched Sunday? I want to say Sunday. I want to play it. It's only like 6 minutes long or so. But I thought it was really interesting. And it sort of ties into some of the discussion that I feel like we've been having about video games. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. Alright, let me put this down. Turn this off, and then we're gonna bring this up. Yeah, there we go. Oop. Get myself out of the way, one moment. There we go.
I miss when World of Warcraft was just a game to me. In fact, I missed when most games were just games. I was reminded of this last night while playing Quest 64, an old Nintendo 64 game. There's barely any direction, there's no objectives, and there's a ton of rooms and corridors and hallways that just lead nowhere. It annoyed me at first. I would say stuff like, why would the developers put that there if it has no purpose? Or I'd say something like, that's bad game design. But then I did some reflection. There was a day before good game design, when games weren't designed to keep you engaged, or keep your dopamine levels high, or give you constant breadcrumb rewards. There was a day when they were just games, to play without purpose just for fun, almost like playing pretend when you were a kid. So why did the developers put that empty hallway there? Well, because someone may just want to explore around for fun. How about that? Playing a game for the fun of it. I used to feel the same way about World of Warcraft. Nowadays, I care about item levels, I care about rating, I care about new content and the best talent builds and the top classes and the top specs and the next patch and the buffs and the nerfs. And even Blizzard seems to have adapted to this style of thinking, making every new zone and raid high octane and high priority in the storyline. There's no time anymore to just relax and play, but it wasn't always like this. When I first started playing World of Warcraft in 2006, I was a dwarf warrior and I had no clue what I was doing. But I did know one thing. I loved being engrossed in the world. I would go into every building in Ironforge just to look around and think how cool it might be to just hang out here with friends and talk. Not questing, not leveling, not gearing, just hanging out in a cool secluded place in Ironforge talking about life. Same thing for this random building in Orgrimmar. I barely made it to level 20 on that first character, but I probably explored most of the entire world map, and I can still remember the awe I felt when I accidentally stumbled into the burning steppes by walking through the broken gate in the north of Red Ridge Mountains, and suddenly I arrived in Fire and Brimstone. Seeing the blackened, smoky sky and the lava pouring from the mountains was amazing, and seeing the creatures and dragons that roamed the land made me excited to eventually come back and quest here, which I never did. Oops. But I do still remember that feeling, the wonder and the awe at every zone and every turn. And now I'm so familiar with every zone that I gotta admit I'm pretty killer at WoW GeoGuessr. So that begs the question, is this just a nostalgia thing? And I don't think so, as Classic WoW and Season of Discovery in particular still have their moments of invoking wonder in me more so than modern WoW. And I think what it comes down to is the idea of a game being just that, a game. The process of not needing to follow an ideology of good game design, or retention practices, or meaningful progression systems, or balance. In the many empty buildings in each capital city, I feel the echoes of players and guilds that came before and probably hung out within their walls chatting in-game rather than using something like Discord to do voice chat. And even beyond the capital cities, there are empty vistas in areas of the game that some may consider useless or poorly designed that were really just there to add flavor for those who wanted it. And even endgame raids in Classic WoW like Molten Core didn't feel as immediately pressing to complete as soon as you could. I mean, there wasn't always a world-ending catastrophe just on the other side if you didn't hurry up and progress through the raid. In modern WoW, there is a greater emphasis on the critical path and on progression for the sake of story, and in a sense, I get it. You have to keep the players engaged, you have to keep the stakeholders happy, and you need to constantly have high stakes. Unfortunately, Blizzard already crossed the border of highest stakes of all time with the Shadowlands expansion and the universe-ending Jailer. I mean, how can you create another engaging story without putting the universe at stake again? But that's just the point for me. I don't want another universe-ending, world-ending, or even continent-ending storyline. I want a lived-in world with smaller, more meaningful bite-sized stories that are fun to explore. I don't want a fresh new continent where it feels like nobody's ever been there before. I want to feel as if I'm part of the world again, not the champion of Azeroth. I want to walk around and explore the corners of each zone and building, not for a reward or a secret, but for the fun of it. But the gaming landscape has changed. We don't need to talk using in-game chat anymore. Discord has a great interface, a bunch of communities, and it's easier than ever to voice chat with your friends. Back in the day, having a TeamSpeak or Vent server was a big deal, and having good enough internet to run that at the same time as playing World of Warcraft was an even bigger deal. Stereotypically nowadays, gamers are painted as these nitro-fueled, energy drink-chugging, RGB lighting enthralled adult children. And to pander to that stereotype, we need flashy games that pack a punch and better pack one quick before your captive audience chooses one of a million other games promising the same thing. But there's another catch. They're all promising the same thing. How awesome would it be to finally have a World of Warcraft expansion or experience with a slower pace, a chiller vibe, and some good old fun exploration? And no, I'm not talking about the cozy game genre, which, side note, it's probably growing fast because more people are wanting that type of vibe, but I don't want WoW to be a farming sim or an idle game. I would want the upcoming WoW expansions to feel like classic WoW and Season of Discovery in their pacing. Slowed down, less high stakes, less flashy lights, less progression systems, with more corners to explore, whether they're empty or not. I don't have a proposed solution, and I'm not saying by any means I hate World of Warcraft now or that I'm quitting retail. No, none of that. I just wanted to throw my hat and my feelings into the ring, and I'm sure some of you out there would feel the same. I still like to just sit on the cliffs of Thunderbluff and look out on Mulgore. I still like to hear the music of Elwyn Forest and Stormwind as I'm strolling through. And sometimes, even as a heroic raider in Dragonflight, I still like to RP walk. And I hope that I'm not alone in saying I miss when games were games and we would play just for fun. Thanks for watching, and take care.
So I thought that was a really interesting video. I thought it was a really interesting sort of take on the situation of modern gaming, right? Which isn't to say that, you know, all modern games are bad, right? That it's all a bunch of grindy progression system bullshit or something like that, right? I think there are games where it makes sense to be very systems driven. You know, stuff like X4 is systems that you also can fly a spaceship through sometimes. You know, Satisfactory is literally about building the perfect system. You know, same thing for City Skylines. You know, any building game that makes sense. It's like it's all about getting the gameplay loop to optimum performance. Strategy games are all about, you know, pulling off economics and combat strategy as best as you possibly can. So it's not, you know, an absolute thing of, oh, every game should just be about the vibes. But I do think there are a lot of games that have gotten very, very focused on sort of as he was saying, you know, dopamine hits, numerical returns, you know, progression systems, reward systems, things to validate the time that you spend playing the game and keep the player engaged in a numerical and psychological sense. You know, part of the choice paralysis that I run into when I'm playing games is not just what do I feel like playing, but it's hard to find the exact right words for it, but what would be the best use of my time to play, right? Do I want to put some time into planet surveying and finding the right place to build my base in No Man's Sky? Do I want to try and, you know, restart my progression track in Dune? Do I want to, you know, do this or do that? You know, what would be the most effective place to put my gaming time into? It's like, bro, I just want to play a game. I just want to have fun. And that's a big part of why I played Star Citizen this weekend, was just like, you know what? I do want to touch that. I do want to open it up again. I want to see where it's at. I don't care about progression. I want to get some money so I can work on buying my next ship, but more than getting like a sense of progression in the game, because it's all just gonna get wiped later anyway. Well, let me do a drip check. I got the jacket on. I got the outfit from our art piece tonight. I just wanted to play the game and be in the space and vibe with it for a little bit and see how things were going. Oh, Artemis. Happy Choomsday. Yeah. I haven't worn this jacket very much, especially in a while. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, part of what I like, the way that I, you know, make all the various outfits and whatnot, I can sort of mix and match it depending on what I feel like. Hello, Sonic. Happy Choomsday. I hope you're both doing well. You're both having a good week. I look so small. Look at me. I'm on the table. It's vaudeville up in here. It's vaudeville night. Tough crowd. So, I think MMOs definitely are suffering from this a lot, right? Because MMOs over the last, let's say 15 years or so, I think have gotten really hyper fixated on progression systems, reward loops, things to sort of keep the players engaged, patch over patch over patch. And I think this even sort of comes down noticeably in the level design of MMOs as well. You know, I think that in the video there was a point where he mentioned, like, yeah, it was like the whole sort of opening statement of the video of why would the developer put this here if this serves no purpose? You know, there's sort of an inherent expectation of if the developer is going to bother putting something in a place, it has to be for something. But especially for like MMOs and sandbox games, Black Desert is just Stockholm Syndrome. Yeah, I bet it is. Especially for those having a world that feels natural, that feels open, and that it exists without you is really important to that sort of greater sense of this being a world that you are entering and inhabiting, and not just a collection of systems that you are playing. It's okay, Artemis. You recognize the problem, and that's the first step. Now you can get help. So, honestly, I feel like that might be a big part of why stuff like No Man's Sky and even like Minecraft, you know, a lot of sandbox games are so appealing to people. It's just sort of the sense of like, yeah, it's just the space that exists, and I get to go and do stuff within the space, but it doesn't need me in the same place. Oh, thank you for the stream streak. I did finally find where that's listed off. It's like, I don't know, it was not clear to me, but I found it. So I don't know, like, I think for me a really good example is Helldivers 2. I know it probably isn't the same for everyone, but I like the stories I play where I'm not the big cog that turns the whole machine. I agree. One, I have a real soft spot for the rank and file. I love just like the standard mobile suits in Gundam series. I love the not hero units. I always feel bad for them when they just get brutalized. When I was playing WoW, you know, obviously I had the story that my characters were going through. I had my sort of internal RP canon, right? Which did put them sort of front and center personally for the story that I was experiencing. Makes sense, right? Standard Marines. Oh, 07 to the UNSC. Love them. But I always had, especially during like Wrath of the Lich King, I always had this mental image of, you know, this big tapestry depicting the war in Northrend, you know, the Lich King and his legions of the dead on one side, and I'm gonna blank on everybody's name, but you know, Thrall and Jaina and the Human King and all of the heroes on the other side, and then the players form the Legion of, you know, the Alliance and the Horde fighting against Arthas. You know, everyone is sort of on the tapestry, but nobody gets the center position, right? No one is the main character on this big display depicting the war. James is like cheering for the Imperial Guard. Someone's gotta. These little guys might not be as flashy, but they're just as important. They are. And I don't know, like, it gets kind of hard to believe when it's just the hero units against the entire world, you know? So, yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I don't want... Like, I liked in Final Fantasy XIV, I liked the story they told, right? Warrior of Light, great. That was good. Not complaining about that particularly, but definitely I like the idea of just being a person in the world, right? We're playing a Total War game, only fielding heroes and sea. It doesn't go great. It does not go great. Oops, all generals. So, yeah. Again, this is not to say that video games don't need systems, right? You do need systems. You need things for the player to do. But I think it's really easy to get into a mindset of only developing systems and not developing space, right? I think one of the things that always kind of drags me out of playing Warframe is I open the game up and all I'm looking at is a list of systems to engage with. What game mode am I going to go into to maximize my loot farming, right? Am I going to do relic cracking? Am I going to go to Deimos? Am I going to go to the Void? What am I doing today to get the reward that I want? Not what do I want to play? You know, conversely, Helldivers 2 has a stupidly simple gameplay loop, right? Pick a mission, you know, pick a mission set with the mission types that you like. Grab your loadout, drop down, shoot a lot, die a lot, complete the objectives, leave, or just die. Just dying once you complete the objectives is an option. Get back upstairs, collect your tokens. If you still have unlocks to do, which I don't, my ship has been fully upgraded for months. There's nothing left for me to spend it on. You know, do your unlocks and your upgrades if you need to. Get the next mission, rinse and repeat. Right? The progression system in Helldivers is minimal. Is the TTS not working? Oh. Let me see if it's broken. Oh, I know why it's broken. Because Mix It Up wasn't working earlier and I closed it and it never opened back up. Sorry about that. We're gonna be working on the fall artwork later. And yeah, sometimes I'll put samples and such towards the DSS, but it's always... It gets finished on its own. Is there a way that I can replay the Redeem? Hello, Lumi. Happy Choomsday. Welcome in. I hope you're having a good week so far. So, Helldivers works for me because even though the progression system is really minimal, there's not a lot to do mission over mission, right? There's not a lot to work towards, but the act of playing the game is so engaging that I keep going back to it. It doesn't need a more robust progression system because I just want to play the game. Which is what it should be, right? Like it shouldn't all be a bunch of reward systems and dopamine hits. You should just enjoy playing the games that you enjoy. You know, I would sort of challenge people to say, you know, look at the games that you're playing. Do you like to play them? Or do you like the sense of reward that you get from them? Do you like the things that you unlock for playing the game? Because if it's just, oh, I'm happy when I like complete another checkbox, I don't know, do you actually like playing the game to get those things? If you do, then fantastic, but I definitely think it's something worth taking a moment to think about, you know? I'm guilty of this too, right? I will play things just because I want to like, progress a thing. And well, yeah, and you know, that's fair. Like I said, it's not going to be perfect, and especially with the way a lot of games are being made right now, I don't think you're ever. I think you are going to play some of those games that are very systems and reward driven. And again, system driven games are not bad per se, but I think there are a lot of games that need to be more experience driven and more just sort of open to play for play's sake, that have gotten very systems driven because I don't know, those are like easier to measure on a metrics scale, perhaps. I don't know, it's hard to say. Hard to nail down exactly why it is the way that it is. But I would say that's kind of the vibe, so to speak. Let me grab my inspiration board. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting sort of way to look at like how games have sort of evolved. And he did make a good point in the video. You know, it's not just the fault of video games, the games themselves, right? It is also the environment that they find themselves existing in. You know, I remember the days of TeamSpeak and Ventrilo when it was like, okay, you know, here is this voice chat room that you would log into just for raid time, because it was easier to do voice chat than it was to do typing in game. But if you weren't actively doing that, you would probably log out of event and just use in-game chat. Now, so much of the chat system is handled through Discords. The dark days of Skype. You remember when Skype was good? Petbridge Farm remembers. I remember moving over to Discord because my main sort of chat group was on Skype, and Skype was going to shit. We were like, and someone said, you know, I set up a Discord, and we all went like, fine. Oh, if only we knew. If only we knew where things were going. So, you know, it's understandable, like, you know, extraction shooters have, what's the word? Why don't we start in on the drawing, because we've been yapping for 45 minutes. Well, we had technical issues at the start, but still. We can continue to yap, but we should start drawing. For sure. There they are. And where to begin? Okay, I do want to try one thing. Oh, right. I remember what that was. So, like, extraction shooters. You know, a lot of them will have proximity chat. So, you know, if you're sort of running through, you got your mic on, your teammates in your immediate area will be able to hear you, but so potentially could enemy teammates or enemy players. And a lot of people are just kind of like, well, I'm just gonna use we'll just use Discord and chat that way. We're not gonna chat through game because that's a liability. You know, I've talked before about the how games are not just competing with each other for your playtime, they're competing with Twitch and YouTube and movies and television and streaming and social media platforms. They're competing with everything that wants your time, everything that wants you to engage with them. So yeah, to some degree there is a heavy incentive on video games to be as engaging and stimulating, and to put it in the dark terminology, habit forming as possible, right? They want you to keep coming back and working on it. Chill game. Is this the one you were trying out the other day? Might have been. Sounds right. So I don't know. Like I don't, certainly I wouldn't point at any of this that we've been talking about and say like, oh, you know, this is an absolute thing that everybody should shift gears on, right? And every game developer should be putting more effort into, you know, it's like having open ambient spaces for hanging out and doing this, that, or whatever. I think certainly for some games, that should be a point of consideration. But I think for some it is certainly not necessary. There's been an interesting bit of a back and forth, you might say, in the Elite Dangerous community. So, back in 2021, they introduced Odyssey, the on-foot expansion, and the community finally got space legs, and they finally got, you know, the ability to walk around on planets and a little bit in space stations. There were like concourses that you could travel around. But yeah, there was some on-foot gameplay. There were like, there was exobiology that you could scan and turn in the survey data. There were settlements that you could walk around and do some missions and, you know, some ground-based combat and stuff like that. The expansion was quite famously not super well received. Uh, and people are still saying we want ship interiors, right? We want to be able to walk around at least the bridges of our ships. If not, a greater amount of the interior. And sort of vibe with that. And there's been a bit of, debate, we might call it, on the amount of impact that would have on the gameplay itself, right? Like, what would that do? How much would you actually use that, right? Because, like, fleet carriers have had interiors for a little while now, and aside from like the occasional social event or something, people don't really make a lot of use of those, is the argument, right? I think it's a somewhat reasonable argument. I think it's a fair point. So yeah, the question again is sort of like, is it worth the devs taking the time to make this and incorporate it into the game when they could be working on something else instead? Man, the question keeps coming up and people keep saying we want ship interiors. So I do believe there is a genuine want for it and there's a genuinely good reason to include it. I think a lot of it does sort of come down to, it's not just about what does it add to the gameplay, right? I think there is a legitimate sort of rationale of, it makes the game feel more tangible. It makes the space feel more real. It's not just, oh, I am my ship and I'm moving around and doing stuff. It makes it feel like there is more of a physical presence in the player character that is piloting the ship and existing in the space. I think for a game like Elite, that is important. I think it's, I'm sure not for everybody, but I think for at least a good portion of the population, they do like the idea of being in this world, being in 3311, in this sort of greater interstellar sci-fi community, and getting to walk that space and fly that space. It's not just about, oh, I'm running around and I've got enough credits that I can buy my fleet carrier now, or I can buy the next ship that releases. Yippee! Because I find, especially stuff like MMOs, which tend not to have quite as robust a library of systems and gameplay loops as some other games do. Once I lose the social aspect, once I lose engagement with the world, and I'm just playing it for the gameplay systems, my enjoyment to the game tends to drop off pretty quickly. I agree. And No Man's Sky, I think, is pretty good. I find I find the world a little too mechanical. To be as engaging as I would like it to be. I think a lot of times with No Man's Sky, kind of similar problem to Warframe. I hop on and I just have objectives, right? I'm trying to do something. I'm not necessarily looking to just sort of exist in the universe. But really, I don't know. I don't know what I would like to see there that would really improve the situation, but I think that is a minor gripe that prevents me from sort of engaging with the game more totally. Let me make sure. Right, I think we're good here. Alright, yeah, that's working now. Yeah, I think one of the things that really enamors people about Eve is the persistence of its universe. Excuse me. Like the feeling of there is a timeline, there is a sequence of events, there is a history that is being written by the players, like independent of what the devs are coming up with. You know, the balance of power between corporations, the, you know, growth and shrinkage of spheres of influence and development of the New Eden feels organic in a way that I don't know any other game has really been able to capture. And frankly, I think there have been some games, like Guild Wars 2 had the world v world system, right? Where it would take like 3 servers and plop them in this like, weird ethereal between realms battleground, and you could vie for, you know, control of the spaces within that. And then I think it wasn't even until later on that they sort of introduced like, okay, you know, depending on the amount of territory that your server controls in this game mode, there will be some benefits that go back to players in the normal space, right? So there's sort of an incentive to get in there and fight for, you know, control of the between realms. I don't remember what they called it, the mists or something. Which is all well and good, but I don't know, like it was almost over-engineered. It was like they tried to put more in to incentivize people doing stuff, but it didn't feel organic. It didn't sort of grow in its own natural way under its own weight. It just felt like a game mode. I know. I'm trying to think. I feel like in Guild Wars 2, I had a couple little hidey holes. I know when I played WoW and Final Fantasy 11, there were like particular locations that I just liked to hang out in. You know, it wasn't like, oh, I really like this one zone and this one area. It's like sort of like the guy was saying in his video, there were particular buildings or rooms in, you know, a capital city or a social hub that I just like to spend time in because they had a really good vibe. And I think to their defense, to Square's defense in 14, like Razadhan in Endwalker had a ton of space. Like there was so much area in that city, even though its function was the end game hub, right? The only thing that it was really like functionally there for was to turn in your end game currencies, you know, tomestones, rewards from raids, and trade it for loot. You know, there were the crafting services as well, but you know, crafters would typically head over to what was the name of the city? The other one, because there was more crafting resources available there than there were in Razathan. It was kind of I guess it was kind of 50-50. But yeah, that was my point. The reason that I bring it up is that I rarely went around the rest of the city. There was not a lot of stuff in the rest that was useful to me. And it wasn't really... I was predominantly there to engage with it systemically rather than thematically. I think that more just comes down to the fact that by the time we got to Endwalker, I had been playing 14 for over half a decade, and, you know, yeah, my mode of engagement with the game was predominantly focused on gameplay loops and not on, this is a cool world that I want to just vibe in. Even though I absolutely did care about the RP and vibes, you know, when it came to actually playing the game, it was very min-max oriented. So yeah, I would kind of argue, if anything, that was a bit of a shortcoming on my part. It's like the devs put all of this space here for me to enjoy and play around with, and it was kind of my fault that I never messed with it. Hey Tishel, I'm glad you like it. I appreciate you dropping in to say hello, even if you can't stay for long. I appreciate that you're thinking about us. Hope you have a very good midweek. We'll see you next time. I'm gonna say goodnight. I like how the colors are coming together. I'm trying to keep things kind of loose and not hyper focused until we get the cleanup done on more of it. I tried playing New World for a little while, the MMO that Amazon made. That game definitely had some problems. I'm not gonna pretend that it didn't. It had some stuff that I quite enjoyed. There were some really good ideas in there, in my opinion. There's some stuff that I kind of wish they had stuck to their guns a bit more. Because I think they wanted to make a more sort of traditional MMO in a lot of ways. But then kind of walked them back after playtesting was like, no. Which, you know, understandable. Listen to your playtesters, but, you know, sometimes you gotta sort of weigh the feedback that you're getting versus your intentions. I think they might have leaned a little bit too hard into responding to feedback and trying to make a mass appealing game. But, you know, I really liked sort of the idea that they had of, you have your home base, you have whichever sort of town you establish yourself in, and then you figure out, like, okay, what do I want to go out and do this time? Do I want to go resource collecting? Do I want to do logging, mining, hunt animals for, you know, animal bits? Do I want to go delve a dungeon? Do I want to go complete missions? You sort of equip yourself accordingly and figure out where it is you wanted to progress or where you wanted to travel to. And there was a fast travel system in the game that would let you, I think, sort of go between cities, but, you know, not, still pretty broad distances there. So eventually you would just have to, you know, walk out the front gate and travel to where you wanted to go to get the things that you wanted or do the things that you wanted to do. And I appreciated that. I appreciated an MMO that insisted that you actually engage with its world and see it and understand it and respond to it. I thought that was very cool. I think there were some elements of it that were kind of weak. I don't know that the world itself was super interesting to engage with, but I definitely enjoyed the sort of sense of adventuring, of, you know, picking a direction, picking an objective, and going out and exploring the world and sort of seeing what adventures we would get up to along the way. You know, pretty much every MMO now has some sort of queue system of like, okay, you want to do this, you just open the menus and... Oh, there was a lot of popping. You just sort of open the menus and select the thing that you want to do, and then you wait until the queue pops, and then you do the thing. You never had to leave the comfort of your own tavern. The reading's not working today. Are they not? They're working earlier. Well, I say that. Let me check this. Oh. No, they don't seem to be. Why would that be? We try mix it up one more time. See if it works. But they might not be. They might just be broken. And I'm sorry if they are, but we were having a lot of scuff earlier. So things might just be borked today. Honestly, that would kind of track for how things are. Let's see what happens if I do this, and then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this one. Weird. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. But it does appear to be not connecting for some reason. I don't know why that would be. This one. Flower? Seems to be more of a sound alert issue. Overlay? Weird. I don't know. Sorry. It would probably work if I closed everything down and tried again, but that would, end the stream, and I don't really want to do that a second time. So, we will vibe. We will vibe. Oh, I think I colored these wrong, actually. Let me check. Yep, they're the wrong color. I, as they say, fucked up. That is in fact a thing that they say. that should be like that. And then we need a little bit of this. That wasn't the right color either. There we go. Right, turn all that back on. There we go. Alright. That's better. I do wonder. I was talking with someone earlier, a little bit, about Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. They were mentioning how there was a video. No Man's Sky is very different. Oh, compared to when you played it before, like 7 years ago? Yeah, I bet it's different. Speaking of vibe maxing. See, that's one of the things I appreciate about No Man's Sky is it will just wait for you. It'll just wait for you to come back. You know, whenever you feel like it, just pick the game up again. Probably whatever stuff you had is still gonna be there. No muss, no fuss. Like, I know I'm throwing a little bit of shade at Dune right now, but I think they are different enough games that it's not a fair comparison. But, okay, so there are a lot of problems that Flight Sim 24 has. You want to learn, attempt to see what happens in your country. Like, if you go back, there will probably be some different stuff just because they have, like, rebuilt some of the planet tech and introduced new systems and whatnot, but you'll probably still be there with whatever you had at the time. So I do think Flight Sim 24 has a lot of different problems. One of the things that sort of came up with the conversation is probably that, you know, with how Microsoft is putting the squeeze on their game studios, Flight Sim is probably not in a very good way right now as a team. But, you know, one of the things that they did, one of the things that they were advertising was how much game they were adding to this one compared to previous entries, right? That you could, like, get out of your plane, you could get out of your helicopter or whatever, your vehicle, and go, like, take photos of wildlife. You could, like, go find a deer and take a photo of the deer and get gored by a deer. Probably couldn't actually, but, you know, you get my point. And as much as you can kind of look at that and be like, oh, that's neat. That's kind of cool. I doubt there were many Flight Sim fans that looked at that and was like, Finally, the gameplay, the content that I have been waiting for in my flight simulator. Wildlife photography. It feels like, or in this lens, they had either an internal decision or a mandate from higher up to make Flight Sim more mechanically appealing of a game. Something with more retention value, something with more engagement, something with more systems. Not really understanding that the majority of people that play flight simulators are there to chill, right? They want to get up, and yeah, some are gonna do like stunt flying in a plane, right? They're gonna jump in a little fighter jet and fly around and go pew, pew, pew. Some are gonna, get into stunt planes and do like acrobatics and stuff. That's fine, that's totally fair. But a lot of people that play flight sims are going to take off, pick a destination, and they're gonna fly there, and then they're gonna land. And that's the gameplay experience that they want. They don't necessarily like need a robust metagame or progression systems or mini games. They just want to be in the air. I do kind of wonder if they had like spent less time. Granted, the network developers that are figuring out how to get all this data streamed back and forth, and the people developing the gameplay loops are not going to be the same people, so it's not quite fair to say they should have spent all that dev time working on one thing instead of the other. It's a bit of an apples to oranges situation. But it does kind of make me wonder if they had put more of the resources towards developing a network, developing a way to have more of the game be client side so they didn't have to stream as much data back and forth. I don't know, would the game have been less of a dumpster fire if they had just realized, like, the people that are going to play this game predominantly want an experience rather than gamified systems. I don't know. getting there. I think the cleanup is coming along. Okay, so I'm actually gonna grab a little bit of this. Pull that in. So. Go. Okay. Only put some amount of shadow directly under their feet, huh? Otherwise, it's a little bit too floaty. I don't know. I kind of have like an idea of what I want to do for the background. I feel like the sort of color arrangement that we have is a good place to start, but I want a little bit more going on. Thank you. Would you believe it? Took a long time. It took like 5 tries to get the exact balance of that to sit as well as it does. Darker interior. Right, give it a little bit of A little bit of depth, a little bit of volume. We need some of this. Gonna layer in these stripes that come over the shoulder. Actually, since we haven't done anything with the halo yet, I can just draw through it. It's another book. You know, one thought I just had on the subject of the vibes, the existence, the being. You guys remember, like, late 2000s? I guess it was around the time period. Remember the WoW killers? Remember when WoW was the most popular thing since Jesus and everyone wanted to have their own WoW and make their own World of Warcraft that would dethrone Warcraft and then make all the gangbusters that Blizzard was making? You guys remember that? Get all the money. It's not just about making money. It's about making a shitload of money. But the thing that they all did not do, the thing that they all did not understand, was they just tried to copy WoW's system. Like, sometimes almost felt like an asset flip. How one-to-one they copied WoW's homework. And then just put a different coat of paint on it, right? Here's the Star Wars one, here's this one, here's the the sci-fi one, without like any real effort to distinguish themselves. But like, once you've established yourself, not just systemically, but once you've sort of adopted one of these MMOs as being your virtual home, right? Like, this is the space that you like to go and inhabit and chill out in and have adventures in. Like, people are not just going to drop that on a whim because you present something a little bit different, right? You need to show them, like, you need to present a genuinely different experience to entice them. And if you don't have that, no one's gonna show up. No one is gonna be interested in, you know, fucking Temu Warcraft. It's like, cool, what else you got? You know, sometimes the vibes are the trick, right? Sometimes it is like, oh, you know, I like the idea of this, but I just don't really get on with the game itself for whatever reason. And then you get a version that's just like a little bit different. It has a slightly different look and feel, and you're like, all right, we're in. You know, that is fair. That does happen, but I would say that is the exception, and it's never a great idea to, you know, bank hard on potentially millions of players being the exception. You know, I think at this point, like, new MMOs are pretty rare. I think we get a lot of games. Well, I think there's a couple of things going on. I think we get a couple of MMOs now and then, but they're so complicated and so difficult to develop and so expensive that most people that have the finances that they could think about doing it don't want to do it. They don't want to touch it. Which kind of just leaves the established library year over year. Yeah, I've talked about, like, I don't think launch day or even launch week concurrent users is a valuable metric, right? I'm sure there's an amount of value to it, of like, look how many people are playing our game, don't you want to play our game too? And then people go, yes I do! And they buy it to jump in with their friends, or, you know, meet people on it or whatever. But like, New World, the concurrent user graph on Steam, like, they hit just shy of 1 million concurrent play, or was it concurrent? Couldn't have been concurrent, but they hit just shy of 1 million players at launch. You know, let me look this up. Steam charts, New World, all-time peak of 913,000. Yeah, so I guess that was concurrent players, huh? Yeah, because that's tracking concurrent player base. But, you know, that went from 900,000 in September 2021 when it launched to 145,000 by November to 67,000 by January. And, you know, it has sort of floated along in the tens of thousands with the occasional spike ever since then. You know, just kind of fluttering along whenever, like, a major content drop, it'll sort of bump back up a little bit. So, you know, again, I understand the marketing appeal of, you know, holy shit, look how many people are playing our game right out the gate. Look how big our community is. You know, come join this huge community and play our game and give us money. But you know, I think when you're planning your game's ongoing life cycle, ongoing, you know, continuing development post-launch, it's like, okay, take your launch numbers and then divide them by 10, because that is probably, if you're lucky, the number of people that are actually going to stick around long term with your game. And just kind of bank on everyone else getting bored and leaving. You know, that's not trying to talk shit about anybody. Like, there's just new games coming out. People have existing titles that they're looking forward to, and when those drop, they go to play them. Or, you know, people are just interested in new experiences and they move on from your game. Some will stick around, some will be like, yeah, I dig this, I want to continue to play it, this is really cool. But you cannot assume that everybody that picks up a game launch week is going to continue to play it. And I worry that publishers do. I worry that devs and publishers look at really, you know, meteoric day one or week one sales and just think, well, we're in the money. We made it. We're just cruising all the way to the bank and we're gonna have these numbers forever. It's like, no. That has never been how it works. I don't know. Like, I'm sure it's not. It was certainly mechanically kind of a dumb thing, but you know, in Final Fantasy XI, there were airships, but the airships ran on a schedule. You had to buy your ticket and get down to the landing platform, the pier, and, you know, wait for the airship to arrive. Or if it was already there, you had to race as fast as you could and hope to make it before the door closes and the ramp goes up and you actually, you know, get onto the ship. I think there was once or twice that, like, I got onto the ramp right as it went up. So, like, the door closed and the ramp went up, but I was on the ramp, so I was, like, on the outside of the airship, just clinging on like a spider monkey as it took off. I'm like, oh, please don't drop me. But there is something real about that. What happens if you fall mid-flight? They delete your account. there's something like as dumb as it is, as little of a detail as it is, it makes the world, again, it feels like it's running on its own schedule, right? There are other people and other things going on, and you are just partaking in it. It is not built around you. It is not catering to your every whim and need. I was sewing some folks Star Citizen the other night, and I was in New Babbage, and they have a train system that goes around in real time. So if there isn't a train at the station when you arrive, you just gotta wait for one to show up. I think it would build a much cozier community. People are there, want to be there type of. I think so. I think in a way, you're right. Like, yeah, the people that are gonna be okay with that are probably gonna be a little more patient. But yeah, everyone that's like too frustrating is just gonna leave. More people, more try-hard people would not do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was joking. Like, I was waiting for the train, and I'm like, it's too real! There was one point where the train was already there, so I sprinted and I made it through. I made it onto the train a second before the doors closed, and I'm like, nailed it. It's all very silly. It's not. And worst thing that happens, like there's a minute or two waiting for the next train to arrive. But I don't know. Yeah, it creates like just a sense of believability, a sense of tactileness to the world of like, oh, the train wasn't magically there when I bought a ticket. It's like this is a system that is running in the world. No. I appreciate those. I appreciate those little moments, little things that just sort of put life into a game. And obviously a lot of this is really sort of thinking around MMOs and sandbox games and stuff that has that sort of tactile world feel. A lot of stuff doesn't give a shit, right? Matchmaking games and all that, games that just sort of go or are very much about the fast-paced gameplay loop. A lot of this is irrelevant, but I do think there's a point still to consider there, because okay, so here's a thought. Here's another point of comparison, right? I realize this has been like the subject for the entire evening, but I feel like it keeps opening layers to think about. So think about a modern Call of Duty, right? Black Ops, whatever, or Fortnite, or I was gonna say Arc Raiders, but I don't actually know what the progression system in Arc Raiders looks like beyond extraction looting. Shit, I don't even know. I guess there's Battlefield, yeah. So, what do the progression systems in those games look like? There's battle passes, unlockables, you can get, oh, excuse me, new skins for your guns, and new attachments, and modifications, and all kinds of shit. And I realize I'm gonna sound like an old person here, but go back to the days of Halo 2 or Halo 3 or the pre-modern warfare Call of Duties. What were the progression systems in those? There were none. There was no there was nothing that you were like actively working towards. You were just playing the game because it was fun. That doesn't make any sense, as I want to play on my own time. I feel like battle passes turned into a job. They 100% do, and the fact that the battle passes expire mean now you have an investment. You have money that you have put in, and if you don't complete the battle pass, you are wasting money like a loser. Like, as much as I have issues with Halo Infinite, I do respect that once you bought a battle pass, it is there forever. It is just a progression track that you can continue, and all of the war bonds and Helldivers, once they add them to the game, they're there forever, and you can just unlock them whenever you decide that you want to get the super credits for it. I think that's very agreeable. I think those are super fair. That you are opting in. I mean, granted, there's a little bit of like indoctrination of being okay with battle passes in general, but as far as the battle pass system goes, I think that is a very reasonable approach. But yeah, older shooters did not have progression systems. Sometimes there would be like unlocks, and you play the game long enough, you unlock new weapons that you can play with or whatever. But I remember in one of the Call of Duty games being on the Foy battle map. It was this huge map, probably like, I don't know, it was probably like a kilometer from end to end. The Allies were on one side, the Axis was on the other. There was sort of like an open field. So the Allies had to attack across an open field to get into the town. Then you fought your way across the town. And then there was a river with one or two bridges. And then the Axis was situated on the other side of the river, right? So it was an asymmetric map that was sort of based on the actual town of Foy. And, there were a number of control points. And this would go back and forth for hours. A single game would take hours to complete because, one side would get up a little bit and take over a control point, and that would sort of give them an advantage, and then the other side would rally and take it back, or, exploit the push on that to attack something else. And it was awesome. It was awesome to just play the game and, chat with the people that were doing it and coordinate and strategize. And a lot of times, I didn't even play until we won or lost. I just played until I was satisfied, and then I logged off. I think fairly often I would say goodbye, and people would actually say goodbye back. In Halo 2, you would jump into a match and you would play, and if you actually enjoyed the people that you played with, which is a completely foreign concept in 2025, but it did happen, you could just continue. Like, you would finish and everybody would just be kind of yelling at each other in the lobby afterwards, and then you could just hit the button and stay in the lobby, and it would fill up if people left. It would repopulate, and then it would just put you into another game. Okay, so kind of to your point, I think that's kind of there's a connective tissue with this point. So here's what I think happens a lot of times with multiplayer games, cooperative or PvP, right? I see this in Final Fantasy 14. I see this in Helldivers. I see this in Mecha Break. Granted, I only played Mecha Break for like 2 weeks once it launched, but you know, the vibe was definitely there. You see this in whatever game you're playing. You get match made with random people. You know, I exclusively play Helldivers with friends because of this, but you get match made with random people. You are given an objective, you pick your character, you pick your loadout, whatever the case may be. Those people, I know, Mecha Break was so sad. Those people, and I admit I have this mentality too, and I try and fight it, but it definitely happens to me. Those people are NPCs. Those people are NPCs that exist solely for the purpose of getting your game done. Right? And if you guys are better than that, if you are more capable of recognizing that these are other people playing the game and doing the best that they can, then I salute you, because you are genuinely kind-hearted and empathetic, and I respect that infinitely. But I think for the majority of people that are playing the game, they regard their teammates as NPCs. And if they do well, then that is the baseline, that is the expectation. And if they do badly, why the fuck are they ruining your gameplay experience? And I think a lot of that does come down to there is a disconnect, even when you are playing multiplayer games, of not regarding the other people, not having that establishment of playing with other people. Everyone is just kind of in it to get their gameplay experience done. Whether it's, you know, knocking off a level in the battle pass, or just getting their dailies done, or they're tired after a day of school or a day of work and don't really care and they just want to play the game for half an hour or whatever. I think it is a more isolated experience than what it used to be. And maybe some of that is because a lot of the systems that have been implemented into these games, battle passes, dungeon queues, etc., are designed around removing friction from a solo, quick game loop and allowing a player to just get in, play the game, and log off. But then, yeah, the consequence is that you don't actually have to spend time interacting with other players and meeting people or regarding them as people. And let's not rose tint the past. People have been calling each other slurs since the internet came into existence. I will bet you one of the first, like, at least one of the first 100 words that was transmitted over an internet chat room was a slur. So it's not like, oh yeah, 2005 was a golden age where everyone on the internet was buddy-buddy with each other and there was never any bad will. But I absolutely formed connections with people in MMOs that, and I had discussions and long play sessions with people in shooters that I would never bother with that now, because it's all about get in, do the game, get out, get into the next one as fast as you can. I don't know that I ever had like a social experience in Overwatch. But I definitely remember playing like zombie lobbies in Halo 2 and Halo 3. And you know what? Even if it wasn't as robust of an experience, I know I definitely had like interactions with people in PlanetSide 2, because that game required coordination. Nobody could just run in and be the hero. You had to actually, have some amount of coordination to assault a base or hold a position or push a position. And so, you would form up into groups, and there would be commands, officers sort of running each of the squads, and then officers coordinating the squads, and there would be back and forth either through, internal or external voice chat to figure out who's doing what, who's bringing what vehicles, how should we push this position. I think PlanetSide 1 did it better. I think PlanetSide 1 did a lot of the ideas better than PlanetSide 2 did. Something about PlanetSide 2 just felt too soulless, but I think still a remarkably social game, because it didn't remove that friction. It was like, no, the friction is part of the gameplay. You have to coordinate with people, or you're just gonna get run over. Out of curiosity, what are the Steam charts for Mecha Break looking like nowadays? Do Steam charts have us? There you are. Okay. So yeah, Mecha Break had an all-time of 84,000. 24-hour peak of 3,700. So that is a nasty downward slide. Can't decide if 3,700 is a lot. So a single game is what, 10 people? So that's like 375 concurrent games? I mean, it's not bad, but it's not great. It's not very good. I don't know, man. Like, they did everything we told them not to do. Just shove the thing full of, you're like, you have a really solid gameplay loop. The mechanics are fun. Some balance issues, that's fair. Just keep the gameplay loop solid. Clean up the balance. Don't stuff it with microtransactions. and keep the cool character customization. And we're good to go. And what did they do? They kept the gameplay loop pretty solid. They took character customizations out and shoved it full of microtransactions. We're just like, okay. Exactly. It was so frustrating. Like, if I had goodwill, I maybe could have overlooked some of it, but like, yeah, but the game is so fun to play, so I can just kind of focus on like getting into a match and having fun with it. But I don't know, man. Like, I felt like they part of okay, for real. What was the first thing you think most people saw about Mecha Break? Like, once the playtest went up and people started posting stuff on the internet, what do you think was the first thing that most people saw? Let me find an image that encapsulates the point that I'm trying to make. There we go. I'll bet you that the first thing, I cannot imagine what they were thinking to make it like they were super greedy, had to have felt slimy. I feel like upper management or the publisher or someone was like, how can we get as much profit out of this as possible? Maybe it's a regional thing. I don't want to start like accusing particular regions of this, that, or the other, but I do feel like typically Korean and Chinese games tend to have more aggressive microtransactions, maybe just because they're used to it. I don't know. Again, I don't want to throw shade or make accusations like that, but I do feel like that tends to be fairly frequent. Okay, so I will bet you that when the game test went up, people started posting about it on Twitter. I guess Blue Sky was the thing at the time. On Reddit, on YouTube. Probably one of the first things that most people saw about the game was dead ass. Which of course made everybody go AO, but then they saw like, wow, you can get really crazy with the character customizer. You can make like anime characters, you can make yourself, you can make your avatar, like you can go nuts with it. Oh yeah. No, 100%. See, here's the thing. Here's the thing about microtransactions that I feel like people don't get. Money given in goodwill will be given much more readily than if they feel like they're being nickeled and dimed, right? I have spent money on super credits in Helldivers. I think I bought like $30 in super credits because the game cost $40. I enjoyed it a ton. And I was like, yeah, I'll spend $10 to get this war bond, to get some cool stuff out of it that I want. That's an agreeable thing. You know, and then the base price of the game was $40, so that felt reasonable, you know. Compared to a $60 base price, I essentially had $20 in savings that I could put into war bonds. if you make a game and the players are enjoying it and they feel like they're being respected and that they can get some nice stuff by paying this microtransaction and supporting the game that they are enjoying, they will much more readily fork that money over and will probably fork more of it over. You know, I never bought anything out of the Final Fantasy XIV store because, like, I already bought the game, I bought the expansions, and I pay monthly to continue to play this game. Why the fuck are you charging me more money for skins? No. I play and I like the game, I'm 1000% going to give the company in one way or another. Yeah. Like, you know, obviously you should never get the sense that a company is your friend, right? Sad but true. But if you feel like you have a positive understanding with the company and they respect you as far as the, you know, company consumer relationship can bear levels of respect, then it's like, yeah, that works, that's good. But yeah, that was the thing that ultimately did make a break in for me, was the feeling of disrespect, the feeling of like, you enticed me with this promise of a particular experience that, you know, I was gonna get to make this cool looking character and customize mechs to look a way that I wanted, and then have fun gameplay loops with my friends. And the first thing you present me with is a watered down version of what you advertise, and it felt bad. And then from there, it was just dodging microtransaction ads to try and actually get into to playing the game. I was just like, this is not good. I don't want to keep playing this. Yeah, you know, games are weird because certainly at some level there is someone that their main goal is to make the best thing that they can, right? They want to make something that players enjoy and get excited about. But yes, especially with larger games, the ones that are ultimately calling the shots are predominantly concerned with money. Sad but true. You know, I'm sympathetic to, you run a company, you gotta keep the lights on, that's totally fair, but you shouldn't be scummy in the process of doing that, right? Oh yeah, it was like mostly ads, and then to actually switch game modes was like 3 button presses to go through other menus. It's like, this is bad. This is so stupid. Who made this? And even little things like, okay, here's your, you know, daily missions. Accomplish, you know, this objective on this mech. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You didn't get the right map? Well, you better play another mission. Oh, you got the right map, but somebody already took the mech and they're not swapping off of it. Well, go again. It could have been good, man. It could have been so good. And what we got was just not it. Alrighty, mage. Is she hanging out? Hope you get some very good rest. Hope you have a very good midweek, and we'll see you next time. I'm gonna say goodnight. So, I don't know, like, I definitely recognize that as much as I'm advocating for more sort of chill, ambient game design and just allowing stuff to exist for the sake of the vibes and the thing, I tend to be a very objective-based player. I tend to be very sort of thinking about, like, okay, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I want to accomplish? Not necessarily, I just want to get out here and just bask. I am guilty of that. I'm 100% guilty of that. So it is kind of weird that I'm advocating for games to chill out, but maybe that's part of why I'm advocating for it, is like, I want my games to demand less of me so that I can just kind of take my time with them and enjoy them and not feel like I have to min-max the systems for fulfillment. I think the funny thing is I'm a very casual Monster Hunter player. Like, I've got a build that, you know, can pretty reliably kill mons. You know, I'll make little modifications for specific monsters, or excuse me, I might, you know, mess around with a little something here and there just to sort of mix it up. But, you know, I don't do the sort of min-maxing build crafting that. What are you doing in here? Oh, you're getting very confused. I'm gonna save before something shits the bed. Anyway. So, you know, I approached Monster Hunter from a very casual standpoint. And, you know, when Wilds came out back at the end of February, and it's amazing that that feels like it was 3 years ago, but it was like 8 months. You know, I feel like the sort of expectation was everyone else can go home, Game of the Year has arrived. And now it's not even in the discussion, I think, for most people, of Game of the Year. Like, it's not even a contender. And part of that, like we've been talking about before, is due to the sheer quality of games that we've been getting over the course of this year, right? Like, if you had to narrow it down to a top 6, you would just be unjustly cutting people from that list. But Ivy was talking about, and Ivy is vocally not a fan of Wilds. But, you know, she listed off some of her concerns. I was like, you know, listening to her talk about it, I was like, okay, yeah, no, that's totally fair. The two big things that she brought up are the performance. The performance is abysmal for many or most people, which is totally fair. I can get a decent play on it, but you know, I have a streaming ready computer, so I have put money into getting hardware that is capable of keeping up. And so, you know, I'm an outlier in that regard. I think for most people, the game still runs very poorly, and that is definitely a bad look, especially 10 months after launch, you know, that like people still cannot run the game smoothly or reliably. That's problem number one. Problem number two is the progression systems are not good. The progression systems have rubbed people the wrong way. And, you know, so there's the normal process of you want a weapon themed from this monster, you need to get parts from the monster for the smithy to then craft into weapons and armor for you, right? You are taking the strength of the monster and incorporating it into your own by literally taking the parts of the monster and making it into gear. But you know, that is the tried and true progression system of Monster Hunter. I was a Mon Hunt fan for a while, but Wilds just didn't hit the same way as Worlds. That's fair. And I got into Worlds very late, so I definitely did not experience like the real time of it. Worlds was already at end of life when I started playing it, right? I used it essentially as a boot camp to get ready for Wilds. So for me, it was like just a bunch of stuff that was front loaded, of like systems that had been added and all of these monsters, and I was just trying to sort of race through the progression, race through the learning curve of here's another monster, go kill it. I think I got as far as the Elder Dragons by the time Wilds came out. So yeah, my experience was definitely different with World. And I can understand it just not feeling the same. I think that's totally fair. But the other thing that they added in Wilds was Ardian weapons, which was essentially an RNG loot system. And it's like, okay, you have to go fight tempered monsters and they will drop Ardian weapon pieces, and then you take them to the smithy, and the smithy will combine them together, and you will get a weapon of the type that you want with, I think, effectively random or slightly tailored, but also random stats. And I took one look at that and I was like, I don't want to do that. And I never did it. I just never touched the Ardian system. I was just like, I like the classic progression system. I'm just going to keep doing that. Which I think is a totally valid way to play the game. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if you're a min-max build crafter, you essentially have to play the Ardian system because that's how you get the best possible mix of stats. And so yeah, a lot of people were very upset if I want to play the game the way that I want to play the game, I have to play this really bad system. So I think that's a valid criticism. Yeah, to be fair, I hate Ardian too. I hate it so much that I literally never touched it. I have a bunch of Ardian pieces because I fought tempered monsters, and so they drop into my inventory, and I'm just like, I don't care. It is a part of the game that I just consciously never engaged. And I appreciate that the game never required me to engage with it, but yeah, I can understand people being very negative about the game because of that being there and feeling locked into using it. But yeah, I think that's sort of an example where I'm bringing it back around to the declaratory statement of, you know, in this case, it's like I treat the game very casually. I'm not so much concerned with the progression and the reward systems. I just want to play the game to play the game and have fun hunting monsters and cool environments. And I'm pretty satisfied with it. I still don't know that I would put it as a contender for Game of the Year because, again, so much good shit has come out, but I definitely would rate it higher than the general consensus seems to be right now. I would be very surprised if Expedition 33 did not take Game of the Year. I think between the sheer quality of the game itself, you know, it's not perfect, it's got rough edges, but every game does. The sheer quality of the game, the story of its development, and the middle finger to a self-immolating AAA industry, yeah, it's gonna win. Two, Lily. We're not gonna go down the list again, but there's so many games. There's Hades, there's Silksong, there's Song of the Sea, there's Expedition, there's Yakuza, there's Donkey Kong. Like, I'm not a fan of Nintendo, but I cannot deny that Donkey Kong did incredibly well. There's Yote. Like, there's so much that has come out this year. It has been honestly really incredible considering the state of the industry. How well this year has performed in terms of releases. Oh yeah, Blueprints as well, which I want to play at some point. I still think Expedition 33 is going to take it. I mean, it is a popularity contest. As much as Silksong is very popular and beloved by so many people, I don't think it's going to be as overwhelmingly popular as Expedition is able to pull off. I think it's just a little bit stronger in Expedition's favor. Yeah, we're gonna play Hades 2 later, but it's not gonna be until next year. We're gonna finish Riven, and then we're gonna play Shantae real quick. This should be a short game. And then we're gonna play Horizon 2. And then we'll play Hades. That is the schedule, that is the plan. Might slip a couple of other games between Horizon and Hades, just because, you know, those are both kind of long form games, and I don't want to do the same thing we're doing right now, where we just get a couple other things engaged and played before we jump into another big game. Yeah, I really want to play Expedition. I'm not going to play it on stream just because I've heard it's kind of a nice game to play on your own and just sort of vibe with it. But I definitely want to make some time for it at some point. Somewhere, you know, with all of that spare time that I have. Yeah, dude. I still remember it was after one of the game showcases that during it they had announced, I think it was Sonic Racing, and Pac-Man was getting added as like a bonus character to the Sonic Racing game. I remember seeing that during the show and just being like, okay, that's... I didn't really know that any of this was a thing, but that's fine. It's not really a... I wonder who's excited for that. And I went on Twitter and there was just like some random tweet or like a retweet of a dude losing his mind that Pac-Man was getting added to Sonic Racing. I'm just like, oh, it was for that guy. You know what, buddy? I'm glad for you. I'm glad you got the thing you want. I hope it's everything you wanted. This is one of those little reminders, like, even if you see something and it doesn't excite you, it doesn't do anything for you, there might be someone. There might be someone out there that, like, it is all of their dreams fulfilled. Not everything has to be for you. Oh yeah, Death Stranding 2 was also this year. That was one of the other ones that's sort of in the discussion. It's been fucking wild. Oops, I forgot that even happened. Oh, I see what I was doing here. I wanted to sort of flatten out the sleeve where it presses against the coat. That makes sense. You know, I think this is on the subject of like interacting with the world in an online game. Knowing, or you know, experiencing it as a space to be rather than just a board for locations and systems to play on. So, this might be a bit of a hot take. I did not hate Dawn Trail. I thought Dawn Trail was pretty good. I thought the story was interesting. I kind of, honestly, sort of liked being the veteran hero that had, you know, gone around and saved the world like 6 times. And you were almost sort of coaching this other character, you know. They would like go and do a heroic thing, and then they would sort of look over their shoulder at you, and you'd just kind of be like, thumbs up, good job, and then they would get really excited. I kind of dug that. I definitely have some criticisms of the story. I thought the world was like the environment that we got was pretty cool. A little too eclectic in a few places, but not bad. I thought it was good. I thought it made a lot of sense. Yeah, this was basically like a work vacation for us. I thought it vibed. I thought it was pretty good. And then yeah, you know, things kind of escalated, and you stride forward, and you're like, all right, kid, let me take care of this. It's getting a little heavy. The reason that I bring it up though is I never unlocked flying. I think I unlocked flying in 2 areas. I just never bothered doing the side quests I never bothered running around getting all of the Aether sites. Just never completed it. And like Shadowbringers and Endwalker, I 100%ed the maps. I did all of the side quests, whether there was an Aether current tied to it or not. I did all of the stories, I talked to all of the NPCs. I liked it. I thought it was good. And you know, I definitely hit burnout by Dawn Trail. Like I was just sort of going through the motions of playing the expansion compared to earlier ones for sure. But I don't know. Like it's not so much, oh, you know, I didn't like the areas, or it was the fact that I didn't need flying. That's bothering me, is the reason that I'm bringing it up. It's not because, oh, the areas are so well designed that you don't need flying, you can get everyone. And it's like, no, you just don't need the areas. Once you beat the game, once you beat the storyline, you don't need to leave the cities again. Everything can be done from cities. Yeah. See, the problem for me is I started on a break and then the break just kind of never ended. Yeah, I'm just playing other stuff, working on drawings, doing other things, and just kind of don't have a lot of drive to go back to the game. I check in periodically just to sort of see where it is. I'm like, oh wow, there's been like 4 patches. Oh dear. Well, and the one that really breaks my heart is apparently the Final Fantasy 11 raids were not very good. Like, no. I was really looking forward to those. Excuse me. So, I don't know, man. But yeah, the fact that you can beat the story and then not have the map like fully and easily accessible to you, you just don't need to go. You don't need to go back out into the world. Obviously, if you need to do crafting or gathering, that's one thing. But like you can just sort of play the game from town, which is wild. Like they built this entire world, but it's not applicable to the end game. Like, compare. So, I'm holding up Final Fantasy 11 like it's some kind of better thing. Final Fantasy 11 is kind of a garbage game, right? I'm not gonna pretend that it's not, but especially in the lens of these things going wrong with modern games, there are definitely ideas about it that's like, no wait, they kind of had something here. They were kind of cooking. So there were a lot of gameplay systems that I never fully engaged with in 11, like in-game stuff that I just never really like fully locked into or whatever. But one of the areas that I did a fair amount with, and I had a group, a link shell. So back in 11, there were no free companies, there were only link shells. But you know, it was essentially a raiding group. That we would go up and we would do an area called Sky. It had a proper name. It had like a proper area name, but it was just referred to as Sky because it was a flying city. And the entire place was essentially an open air dungeon. Like you would go up there, and it was this big sort of like central citadel with platforms ringed around it, and on each of the platforms there were one of the four guardians, four beasts, that were modeled after the four mythical creatures of I'm really blanking on it. Yeah, it was Japanese folklore. Genbu, Suzaku, Seiryu, and shit, I'm blanking on the last guy. But yeah, it was the phoenix, the dragon, the tortoise, and the. Why am I blanking on this? I mean, they reused the same idea in Stormbreaker, Stormblood, with the auspices. Yeah, the black tortoise, the azure dragon, the vermilion bird, and the white tiger. Okay, yeah, it's a bunch of different cultures that have the same idea. So yeah, you had to fight each of them, and then they would give you like a key that would let you go into the citadel. And I think there was a second tier of two guys, and then you fought them for keys, and that would let you fight. I don't remember the name of the top level guy. He was a real bastard, he was. Let me see if I can find the names. Yeah, so you would fight Seiryu, Suzaku, Byakko, that's the last one, and Genbu. So Eureka was essentially them trying to recreate a Final Fantasy 11 feeling progression system. It didn't really work because of the changes in technology and accessibility and information sharing, but it was a fairly comparable experience in a lot of ways. So yeah, you would fight them, and they had their reward pools, and then you would get keys essentially that would let you enter the shrine. Right, and then yeah, I think there was one more tier that you had to fight through, and they would get you the keys to let you fight Kirin, which was like the ultimate boss, and he was really tough. But it was an open world dungeon, and there was no summoning system. There was no system. Well, there was no queue system, first off, and then there was no. There was no way to summon other players. So when it was time, everyone just rode there. Everyone just like got on a chocobo. They went to a chocobo stable and rented a chocobo and went to the entrance to Sky. And everyone had to show up. Yeah, Bosha, I think, was a lot more accessible, but kind of the same problem. Like, it was more accessible, but I definitely never had to like coordinate with people in Bosha as much as I did with Eureka. There was less of a feeling of like, oh, really getting to know anyone or coordinate more carefully, because it was much more just kind of like get in, do the content, and get out. Which yes, made it very, very easy to work with, but yeah, I think it never had that same sort of vibe. You know, Eureka was great for me because I could just sort of idle, maybe help out with the NM trains a little bit. You know, I could work on art and whatnot. And then the trains would be ready to go and everyone would pile into their groups. I would join the train and then we would do that for like 20 or 30 minutes. We would get the rewards and then I would go back to idling. I don't have a problem, shut up. All multitasking. So yeah, I really liked, I thought Eureka was good. But, you know, the frickin' going through, and I've played it a few times here. So the area, and there was almost no reason to go through the Sanctuary of Zeta other than to get to Sky. But fuck if the music doesn't go so hard. This is genuinely one of my favorite tracks out of the game. You know another thing? I'm sorry, I feel like this is partially trying to genuinely like dig down and find some answers as to like the isolation of modern game design. And part of it is just me waxing nostalgic all evening, but let me put it this way. In whatever games you're playing, be it Final Fantasy, Destiny, I don't know, whatever. Sort of anything with like an open sandbox map or whatever, how much is there sort of a space, like a location that sort of everyone knows? Like there's sort of a particular point on the map, be it a town or in a hill, that like sort of has an emergent significance that the community sort of developed. Not because like the game's story said it was important or something in the lore established it, but just kind of like, oh yeah, that's where everyone goes to do X, right? There's a beach on Materia where all the G-posers and venue hoppers went to hang out. Yeah, something like that. Because everyone could go to Materia. Oh, I see. So it's just like easy to get to, and then everyone, it just sort of became the hangout point. That's cool. So in 11, there is, like, once you get up to around level 10 or so, the XP rate drops off significantly, such that you essentially have to form parties. And the best place to form low-level parties was the Valkyrie Dunes. And there was an oasis town in the Valkyrie Dunes called Selbina. This is a song for it. But it was like the rest stop, right? Everyone would go to Valkyrie Dunes. If you needed to take a breather, you'd go chill in Selbina. It's a freaking vibe. Sometimes you go to Selbina just to listen to the music. Because remember, this was pre-YouTube days. Dark times indeed. You couldn't just pull up the soundtrack to listen to whenever you wanted. But yeah, there's sort of like, it wasn't even, I would say, like there were people wrote guides, but it was just sort of like disseminated through general knowledge of like, okay, you hit level 20. These are the smart places to go to do your level progression now. Head to Kufan Isle for like 20 to 25, and then you head to Kazum for, you know, the next stage, and so on and so forth. I don't know, like, so 14 has a couple locations like that, you know, the particular communities will set up, but I don't feel like, you know, I don't feel like ever, so even, okay, here's the thing though, even like 1.x Final Fantasy 14, I think had some of that, you know, the fact that when they started introducing the Calamity sequence of events, you know, the sky started turning red, the storm started kicking up, monsters started appearing. The community rallied around Ul'dah because the way that the community had sort of gravitated and chosen what areas they liked to make use of. Ul'dah was the most popular city. And so that ended up sort of working itself into the lore of the game, that like Ul'dah in particular really got hit hard by the Calamity and, you know, was attacked by all of these monsters, and the adventurers rallied to the defense of the city. So there was some of that. There was some of that going on. And I think 1.x14 really wanted to have more of an old-fashioned design to the world, where it's like, yeah, you're gonna be sort of out here, and there's gonna be little outposts that you can sort of teleport to or chill at, you know, recuperate, but you know, you're gonna be doing more of a sense of like ranging away from the cities and exploring a potentially hostile environment. And Realm Reborn 14 never, in my opinion, had that sense of like being away from safety. There's definitely stuff that 14 did very right, but I think there's also stuff that I miss from older game designs. And some of it requires friction. Some of it requires doing stuff that the players are not gonna like. Because yeah, it sucks to be like, okay, I wanna go to this dungeon. It's a 20-minute run to get out there. And I need to make sure that I have stealthing potions because the caterpillars in there do not see, they only have hearing, and they will come over and eat me if I do not have the potion of silence. I need to have a spell ready if I'm a caster, right? So I gotta go in, and I gotta take my potion, and then I'm gonna sneak my way through the dungeon until I get to where my party is assembling, and then we're gonna fight monsters. Sounds kind of shitty, but you know, I remember that. I remember that experience. I remember crawling those tunnels. Oh, my roulette cue popped. Do it. I think they were more intimate. I think that is a good word for it. I think there was a lot more consideration. Well, not even necessarily consideration. I think consideration would imply that the game designers actually knew what they were doing, which I don't know that they did. But I think the solutions that they came up with were more intimate. I think they created more of an experience in the same way that the designers were working with the limitations of the technology that they had. The players were working with the limitations of the game and figuring out how to overcome them, in the process had an intimate experience. I think some of it, not to, I don't know, we're so far down this rabbit hole at this point, I'm just gonna keep going. You know, I think this was, I was discussing this with my brother a while back, but there was an Ordinary Things video that was talking about decadence and the removal of friction in particularly modern technology is what they were focusing on. But you know, what does every good story have? There's some amount of conflict, tension, of friction. There is a challenge that is presented to the protagonist, right? And it doesn't have to be world-ending, right? It doesn't even have to be life-changing. It should just be like, here's the thing that they need to do, and here's the thing that sort of gets in the way of that happening. You know, if you have a story where the protagonist has to do something, and then they go do it, and there wasn't any problem, then it's a boring story. You know, the intimacy, the emergence of the narrative, the thing that gives it a sense of value and makes it stick is the presentation of the conflict, of the challenge, and the discovery of how they get over that hurdle. You know, I remember there was I was doing a raid in WoW years ago, during Wrath of the Lich King, we were on the final boss of the raid, and we were going through it. There were ads up, the off tanks were handling the ads, the main tank was on the main boss, and one of the off tanks died. And so the monster that they were handling was loose in the grid, right? He was running around. And, you know, for a tank, it's like, okay, they can sort of maintain it with the healers, support, and all that, but everyone else is just going to get one shot by this thing. So we're watching this thing starting to run train through the raid group, and like, oh god, it's a fucking wipe. And one of the DPS warriors is just like, not today, and charges in and draws aggro on this thing and pops every tanky ability he has and survives just long enough for one of the healers to get the off tank back up and into the fight. He dies as the off tank is pulling aggro. And because he did that, we were able to stabilize the group and clear the fight. So he got first pick of the loot. But it was a moment, right? It was an incredible moment of just, you know, overcoming adversity and clearing a challenge. And I'm not gonna say like, oh, modern games can never create moments like that. They absolutely can, right? Let's not kid ourselves. But those are the things that make games really special, right? Those are the things that, like I'm doing right now, you talk about years after they're gone, years after you've done it. Yeah, when things go a little bit sideways and you still manage to bring it back, you're like, that was cool. Though I will jump back to that other point of when you're just grouping up with a bunch of randos and you're just trying to get your dailies done. You're not looking for scuff and adventure, you're just trying to clear your checkbox, and then you get frustrated of why are they not doing their fucking job. Right? The mentality gets twisted. Where was I going with all this? I'm not 100% sure, but I guess my point is just I feel like when you remove the friction, when you make it too easy to progress or too easy to sort of complete objectives, when your objectives get sort of compartmentalized down into a daily checklist rather than something more long-term or more sort of that requires cooperation with a group, you know, whatever the case may be, it's going to vary from game to game, right? I don't know, you lose that intimacy. You lose something. I was extremely disappointed. Well, not extremely, but I was disappointed when I started playing Elite Dangerous and I saw the Alliance Chieftain. I thought, that's a really cool ship. It kind of looks like a Pelican. I want that ship. That's going to be my daily driver. And so, you know, I set myself to working towards that. I started in the Sideliner and I got a Cobra. And then I worked in the Cobra until I got the Chieftain. And it took me like maybe 3 weeks. And I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be a progression chain that would take me like months. What do I do now? And the answer is you continue to play the game. And, you know, I went on and bought other ships after that, but I still remember that moment of sort of confusion of like, oh, I thought this would be harder. I expected more of a challenge. Sorry, I gotta jump in real quick. Okay, yeah, whatever, right? You know, I was watching a Star Citizen video yesterday. I guess it was yesterday. This one guy, Detox, does a lot of PvP content. Yeah, I'm not really interested in doing PvP, but I'm interested to see, you know, how it's looking and how that branch of the content is developing. So this was from a couple months ago when they introduced the Idris, the big capital ship that's sort of the more or less the hardest hitter in the game right now. Arguably the hardest hitter. So they essentially had two Idrises that they had been flying in a wing together, but they weren't really finding anyone to fight, so one of the Idrises went off to do some other content while this one continued to patrol around. And so they got to this one location and they found another capital ship, another Idris, that was sort of parked and looked like it was sort of hiding. So they were like, all right, here's some pickings, and they opened up on it and it started moving, and another Polaris, another capital ship, jumped in. It was an ambush. They had sort of left the Idris out like a lure, and then once somebody started attacking it, they jumped in and started fighting back. So this fight went on for about 50 minutes. There were like 6 people manning Detox's Idris. The other one, they got the call and, you know, started moving to travel back and provide support, while Detox and his crew are, you know, fighting against the Idris, the Polaris, and they have a couple other smaller ships that are running around being nuisances. You know, at one point the support Idris gets rammed and blown up, and so they have to, you know, all abandon ship and go back to a port and respawn the Idris and, you know, come back and reinforce. But, you know, I was amazed at the durability of these ships. You know, this is before engineering gets into the game. This is before component integrity. You know, everything is just sort of running on, you know, very gamified health pools right now. You know, you just sort of have your ship's shield health and then your whole health pool. And if that hits 0, your ship goes into soft death, and everything sort of shuts down, and then it blows up if the soft death health pool is expended. You know, it's very straightforward. It's very gamified, and they're working on the more advanced systems. But I was very impressed that, like, even at that level, you know, having capital ships going up against each other is like this major back and forth that is like a long-term engagement. It's not like, oh, 5 minutes and they blow up and they're done. It was like, that's what I want to see from these fights, right? I want that when these fleets get into it, like, they could be going at it for upwards of an hour. Like, this is a major PvP engagement when this happens. So, I don't know. That was very cool to see. It was like, oh, it's actually, you know, progressing in the right direction. Kind of like Sea of Thieves, yes. So I don't know what the ship health or durability in Sea of Thieves is like. I feel like what I have seen has generally been shorter than that. You know, once the ships start to take on water, things can kind of snowball pretty quickly. I could be wrong. I've never actually played it. I've only seen some people playing it. Watched a couple videos, so do please let me know if it actually can get much more crazy and drawn out than that, because that would be interesting. But yeah, there is a similar sort of vibe, especially with the larger ships, that, you know, you need somebody piloting the ship, you need people manning the guns, you need people running around. So the plan, I hate to always bring this up with Star Citizen, but the plan long term, they're actually working on test builds of it right now, is that there will be like components, right? There'll be shield generators, heat exchanges, power relays, other, you know, such things that can be independently damaged, need to be repaired or replaced, and that can, you know, sort of increase the survival of your ship, then rather than just your health bar reach out. It's like, oh, the component needs to be dealt with. So, you know, you'll have engineers sort of running around repairing the ship. You know, they had one or two guys running around the ship on security detail to make sure that nobody had boarded the ship or was going to come shoot everyone in their chairs. Which, ironically, there was a friendly fire incident because one of the guys did not have their party marker. It just wasn't showing up, and so the security chief shot them to death. So yeah, game still has bugs, but I don't know. It is nice when Star Citizen works, when the pieces fit together. It's an incredible game. It has very incredible moments. And then the missions break again, and you're like, God damn it. Doing so well. I was noting at one point, like this time last year even, the main bugs that I was running into, the stuff that would always just like completely take me out of the experience, would be stuff like ships randomly exploding, stuff clipping out of existence. There were a couple of times where I would fall through a planet, and, you know, a lot of that was basically due to, I would say, server latency. You know, the servers wouldn't be able to keep up with the rate of things moving, changing location, changing state, and would get confused. And so, you know, stuff would like phase out of existence, or stuff would clip into each other and explode, stuff like that. Those bugs have not really been running into this year. You know, still a lot of bugs, but it's more, I would say, stuff like on the back end. So like mission management, inventory management, interactables breaking, you know, stuff more sort of internal to the game rather than the more sort of core functionality of the physics systems and whatnot. So I want to take that as a win. I want to take that as a good sign that things are trending positive, even if there's still a lot of work and then some to get through. But there's some cause for optimism there, I think. I would still not recommend the game. Not for a while still. But I don't know. I think it is getting to a point where people, you know, that are intrigued by it should definitely keep an eye on it. See how it progresses. See if it's going in a direction that you like. Maybe in another couple of years, it'll finally be into a predominantly playable state. And we'll just be sort of ironing out the remaining bugs and adding more content to it. A little bit overly optimistic, but one can dream. Yeah. They are. And I think in a perfect world, in perfect conditions, the people that love them are given the resources and the space to make the best thing that they can. Obviously, you know, there are limitations to that. There are factors of real life that need to be balanced in. And then obviously, you know, in reality, there are many different parties of interest, shall we say. They're not always interested in making the best game possible. They're interested in making the best profit possible. I realize as a game developer, I am somewhat hypocritical to say this, but I do feel that there's probably too much money in games. I think when so much money gets involved in anything really, but in game development, it attracts the interest of people that are not interested in making games. They're interested in making money. And they see games as a means to do that. It's like, I don't want to make you a lot of money, I want to make a good game. If you make a good game, by rights at least, you make a lot of money. Unfortunately, that's not always true, because sometimes you just get screwed by bad luck. But all things being fair and reasonable, that is how it should go. Oh, speaking of which, I saw, so Steam is testing out a new system for visibility of titles. I'm sure you guys have all you've all opened Steam at some point or another, and you see the storefront, right? And it's just, you know, there's a couple of headliners, a couple of recommended things, and then the menu just goes, right? It's just a potentially infinite scroll of games. So what they're trying out, it's in some level of testing from what I understand, is they're essentially going to create a calendar, right? It's going to show you a calendar, and then per day on said calendar, it will show you a list of upcoming titles based on other games that you play, stuff that you've wishlisted, you know, the data that they have available to judge the types of things that you would be interested in. So it'll show like recent releases. Oh, excuse me. So yeah, there will be like a list of recents and a list of upcomings, you know, on a per date basis, which I think has a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of potential good there to say, like, to be like, hey, you know, looking ahead a month, here are things that you might want to look into and see if they're going to be, you know, something that you want to wish list or buy. So I hope that works. I hope there's some good results there. Because excuse me, 1 second. Sorry, had to clear my throat a bit. You know, for every good game that comes out, every Expedition 33, every Silk Song, every Hades, every Little Witch of the Woods, every Sword of the Sea, there are 100 decent to good games that are released and never get picked up, never get heard about. Yeah, I think it was the same video who was talking about, you know, how in their YouTube comments they see so often that they'll be talking about a game and the comments will be like, huh, this game looks really interesting. I wish I'd heard about it. But, you know, small team, no marketing budget. Yeah, so I think that's a lot of what this is trying to combat. It's like, hey, we see you're interested in deck builders. Here's a bunch of deck builders that are coming out, scheduled to come out in the next month. Give them a look, see if any of them tickle your fancy. Here's a bunch of, you know, vibe games. Here's a bunch of casual games. Here's a bunch of sandbox games, etc., right? There's a bunch of dungeon crawlers. So, like I said, they're still testing it. Not rolled out to a wider audience yet or anything, but I hope they find some success with it. I hope it is. I hope their tests return positive results. I think it would be really helpful to not just do it based on algorithmic data, right? Have like genre calendars, have just like expand the system in general, right? Like, don't just make it based off of my metadata, right? If I go look for a game, you know, at the bottom of the store page, offer me, you know, either right there in a click through, a calendar of similar games to the thing I just looked at. Or let me look for a genre and then present me a calendar of games within that genre, right? Just, if you have the system available, it doesn't have to be personal metadata driven. I feel like you could just make it more generally explorable. I think that would help it a lot. Because yeah, one of the points that they made in the video was, this is really a really good system for trending, right? If you play a lot of horse girl games, for example, that's going to be factored into your metadata, and it's going to show you more things to cater to the things that you have previously liked. Not necessarily going to be like, you should try this out. I got a feeling Might like it. It's gonna be like, no, here's your 25th roguelike. And you're just sitting there fucking rotund on roguelikes being like, hey, Choomsday, I love you, Gabe. I love you too, random citizen. Hi, I'm Gabe Newell. So yeah, I would definitely like to see that. This is me just sort of speculating on the little bit that I've heard about the system and ways that I could possibly see it being better. But yeah, I think a big thing that a lot of people want to see and would be very helpful. Why is that back? When did that happen? Whatever. Would be... Ah, shit, that's gonna be in the fucking... It's gonna be in the time-lapse. I'll figure that out later. Hold on, let me check the time-lapse really quickly. I just want to see how long that's been a thing for. Okay, so right now, it's only the last like 5 seconds out of 60. That's been there a while. Alright, well, we'll figure it out. But I do think there's the potential for it to improve visibility of games that can't afford a huge marketing budget and need to sort of figure it out. Slap a little emote? Yeah. Slap a little... Yeah, I can like take it in DaVinci and just paste something over it or blur it out. I mean, let's be realistic. I'm probably gonna forget to ever export the time or upload the time lapse anywhere anyway, but I can pretend that I'm gonna have a plan for it. We're just gonna stay up here for now. We can work on some of the lower extremities in the background next time. Alright. It's looking pretty good. Alright. You know, all the stuff that we've talked about tonight, the sort of meandering around different vibes in games and examples of stuff done well and stuff done poorly and stuff that's sort of faded out of popularity. I definitely don't think I'm alone in many of the sentiments. I think there is sort of a general vibe of dissatisfaction, at least in the circles that I float in, with the direction of particularly AAA games. You know, not universal, but does seem to sort of be going in that direction. But, you know, all of the things that I have said are absolutely subjective, right? I certainly don't think that any of it is like a mandate to change design paradigms or to go in a certain direction, to stop going in a certain direction. You know, people are gonna enjoy different things and they're perfectly allowed to. Everyone should find the games that they have fun with, the games that appeal to them, and they should be able to enjoy them without fear of being judged for their taste. But there's absolutely some shit that I will judge people for. I'm kidding, mostly. But one of the things I think is really nice about the state of the industry, despite the many problems that it is dealing with, is that it is a very large industry now, right? It is not a few people making all the games for everyone and having to, you know, sort of aim for mass market appeal. You can make, as long as you budget for it, you can make a game with a very niche market appeal. And that group will be very happy that someone is finally making a product that caters to their particular wants. I think it is a fallacy to try and make mass market appealing games, for the most part, in 2025. I think the audience is potentially big enough, and potentially even bigger, with people that feel like they've just kind of been ignored the entire time. the people don't make games for them. Suddenly see, oh no, they are. They are making games that we want to see, that appeal to our interests, that recognize groups that have been ignored. I don't know what all those would be, but I think that's part of what is allowing indie devs to be so successful. When did Dave the Diver come out? Is that this year? 2023. Okay, so that was 2 years ago. This is a weird little game about going diving and collecting treasure and fish for your sushi bar. It's like, yeah. Disco Elysium, Valhalla, Cult of the Lamb. I think, oh, he's playing games. Let's see. I wonder if there's a game for me somewhere down the. Almost definitely. I feel like at this point, not 100%, right? But I feel like at this point, you would almost be harder pressed to not find something that caters to a particular want. You might need to broaden your search a little bit. You might need to really dig into Steam or go look on itch.io or Good Old Games. But yeah, there's so many people making games and such a broad variety of games. And yeah, like, if we're talking AAA budgets and AAA resources, there are going to be minimum requirements, right, on the number of potential interests and buys. So if it gets too niche, they're probably not going to do it. But you know, I think, sort of jumping back a little bit, that was the problem with Flight Sim 2024. They tried to take, frankly, a niche game genre and then give it mass market appeal by gamifying it and adding a bunch of stuff to make people more interested than they would have otherwise been. But they didn't like focus in on making the core thing that made the existing fans happy. And they're still paying the price for that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Flight Sim, when it launched, what had like walkable spaces, right? Like you could walk around the tarmac, inspect your plane, do the, you know, pre-flight checks and all of that. So if it had been up to me, I would have said yes, do that, keep that, include that. That is good. One, that makes sure that the technology is there and working, so that if we decide we want to expand on some of the walkable gameplay systems, we have the core technology already in place. We don't need to try and tack that in post-launch, honestly. Two, I think that's a reasonable element of a flight sim experience, you know, being able to walk around your plane and interact with it outside and in. That seems like a fair thing to include, you know, right out the gate. So no complaints there. But I think I would have sort of left it at that, right? Be able to walk around maybe the airports, definitely the tarmac, and get in and out of your plane. And then focus on making sure that the plane experience is really good. The flying experience is really good. The performance is really good. And then all of the other stuff that you want to add can come later once you have a solid foundation built in a game that people are actually excited to play. But from everything I have heard, they didn't really do that. They tried to add too much stuff too quickly, and the core experience was not tended to the way that it should have been. That is my understanding as someone that does not play 2024. Could be off base, but from what I have heard from people that play it, that is what sounds like has happened. And it was probably because someone demanded that the game be a bigger, mass appealing title than it was ever going to be. Because money! Hello, I like money. I'm using 2020 version because all the posts and videos see the core function is still not ready for prime time. That's all good. That's all good, especially since Flight Sim 2024 was supposed to be a like retooling of the core functionality of the game to get it off of old tech that wasn't able to hold up. Like, this was supposed to be the grand revitalization of the game from a technology standpoint. And it sounds like they just broke it. That sucks. It really sucks. I hope they can get it fixed. It would be really nice if they could get it up and going, because I don't know, like I don't personally have much investment in flight sims. They're not really my jam, but I don't know. I don't have anything against them, and it would be nice if the people that do enjoy flight sims have a game that they can really get into and have a good time with. There's very few games. There are very few games and very few companies that I just like would root for them to fail. Even 343, I would be happy if they could actually manage to land a win. I'm not holding my breath, but if they can, then I'll be happy for them. Use the old code as basis for 2020. They tried to start fresh with 24 and found out it was harder than they thought. Yeah. Yeah. Building from scratch is pretty difficult. I sure hope they use me. Oh my god, that was awful. I certainly hope they didn't do any vibe coding for that thing. I think 2024 is a little bit too early for that, but it might have been right on the cusp. Okay. I think this is coming along pretty well. I think we're getting there. Still a lot to clean up. One of the things that I noticed in another drawing that I'm working on, kind of looking back, I have a little bit of similar feeling from some of the recent work. Like, I've been pretty happy with it. I feel like the sort of general painting approach that I'm utilizing right now leaves things a little bit soft in a few places, which is not bad. It's not bad, but I do want to try, I think, and come in and do a little bit of a better defined pass on some areas where it makes sense, right? Some of the stuff that should be a little bit sharper in its definition, try to come in and really make sure that those elements are well rendered and not just sort of like mushy or half-baked. Like, some stuff makes sense to be soft and some stuff should be hard, right? And being able to do both and recognize when both approaches are, or either approach is appropriate, I think is going to be sort of the next step, so to speak. But I like where this is getting to. This up a little bit. One thing that is kind of nice about using the color mixing is it blends colors a little bit. Blends colors quite a bit, actually. But it can create some nice like color inference and color bouncing between nearby objects that might be harder to try and do deliberately, right? But, you know, just sort of painting the way that I am, I get some bleed over, and so then it kind of feels like, oh, there's some like light refraction, some light bounce from one object to another. So I don't know, in some ways it kind of helps. Kind of gets me where I want to go more smoothly. That said, I gotta be careful. Again, like making sure that things are well defined against each other. And that we don't just get like a big smudgy mess as all the colors just sort of diffuse. I think we're doing an okay job with it. Whatever the fuck this is. Okay, I think, yeah, that's some leftover from the paint over. So we can just kind of come in and clear that out. Okay. Yep, I think that's coming along pretty well. But unfortunately, I think that's where we need to call it for tonight. Thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it, and thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you for chilling while we worked on it and just started chatting about this, that, and the other. A lot of rambling, but I don't know. It was a fun thought process to just sort of work through it and sort of dig through the layers, figure out what we could get to, figure out where we got. I'm glad. I'm glad. It makes me happy that this is a comfy place for people. I am glad I can be comfy. I feel like I'm grumpy so often. It's nice to just be able to vibe with the tunes. Alright. Who do we want to hang out with tonight? Let's see. I think what we're gonna do. Oh, is it raining? I don't know if it's raining. I don't hear any rain. If it is raining, it's very soft. I'll go check. There's only caffeine running through my veins. Oh, that's a fucking mood. Alright. Let's see. So Belle, I think Belle's doing some traditional media. Or is Belle offline? Belle might be offline. Yep, she checked out. Alright, that's fair. Alright, in that case, I think we're gonna go say hi to Boru and Valk. They're playing some Arc Raiders. They're just chilling, doing some raiding. I say chilling. Valk is probably being very toxic. Yeah, I definitely just didn't want to draw hands again. Nah, it felt appropriate to the piece. Alright, let me see who we're gonna raid into. It is all dependent. Because they have a shared chat, but I just wanna whichever of the two. Okay, 2 times on Boru. And Valk. Also 2 times. Damn it. Alright, let me back out really quickly. I just want to see if there's any art buddies, new art folks that we might go say hi hello to. No one's really catching my eye right this moment, which is okay. Might go try and say hello to somebody next week. We did just introduce ourselves on Tuesday. When did we go say hi to them? Was that Saturday? Yes, it was. Yeah, that was Saturday. So yeah, we just did one. Alright, why don't we go say hi to Boru tonight? Why don't we go say hello to Boru and Valk? They're raiding. They're shooting bots and trying not to die. Yeah, they're a good group. They're good people. Well, I say people. One is a shrew and one is a dog. But They got the vibes. What should our raid message be tonight? Actually, since it has kind of been a lot of the message, I'm gonna do a vibes raid. Alright, I'm gonna shut down the VOD. We're gonna go say hi to the crew. We're gonna say bye-bye to YouTube and get into bus.